Hello and welcome to another episode of the Altered States podcast with myself, Josh Gape, Harry Williams, and our guest today, James Buckingham. James owns a couple of gyms down here in Exeter called PFP, and we've wanted to have him on the podcast for a while now because he's got a deep knowledge of training, holistic health, and nutrition, as you'll see throughout the episode today. Before we get going, I just wanted to let you know that I've set up a discount code for my website for the listeners of the podcast. That's apenutrition.co.uk. We sell a bunch of different health foods and supplements, including grass-fed beef organs and grass-fed colostrum. If you head over and you're interested, plug in the discount code AS10 at checkout, and that'll get you 10% off site-wide. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey James, how's it going?
I'm good, mate. Thanks very much for inviting me on.
Thanks for coming on. So normally what we do when we've got a guest on is we just start off with like a little bit of their background. So I know you've got quite an interesting journey, having been in the army and then obviously transitioning to owning PFP. So do you want to give a little bit of that sort of story?
I'll try not to drag on. I'll make it relevant if I may. I joined the army after being a farmer in Ireland. And joined the British Army and did 22 years of it, and it was an infantry unit, so I guess for the purpose of this talk it was fairly arduous but always aerobic output training, but I don't want to get into that too much. And then left at the age of 40 after doing 22 years and joined a commercial gym. Well, I did a close protection course up in Hereford, and there was either a cross between doing close protection work or something different. And I thought, what do I like doing?
What is that? Sorry, close protection.
It's where you might go and protect people or places, like in Afghanistan, Iraq.
Okay,
So you can be a 4 or 6 man team or part of a group of blokes. Highly paid back in those days. But I thought, well, I've done 22 years of this type of thing.
Yeah.
So I thought, what do I like to do? I like to cut around in Lycra, lifting weights. So that's kind of what I did. And then I joined a commercial gym, and then after a couple of years, I thought, Christ, I'm 42 now. I can't be doing this. So I opened my own facility, and then it's kind of gone on from there. And I've got a couple of gyms, and
nice.
That's pretty much it.
So were you based in Exeter when you were working the commercial gym?
Yeah, in Fitness First down by the river there.
Okay, and what was that transition like? How did you go about opening your own gym? I can't imagine that's the easiest thing in the world to do.
It really was not that difficult. After about 2 years, I left the army and kind of got that out of my system, and I was doing, clients and doing all that stuff. And then after about 2 years, I think, Christ, I'm a bit old and smelly for this kind of cutting around.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll just try to look for a unit, and I found a unit, and it was just a small unit, so it was only 1-to-1 really. So you couldn't make a huge amount of money because you had to be in front of the person to make money.
Yeah.
So I thought, what else could I do? I opened a slightly bigger unit, and then I opened up the gym, and then I thought, I quite like this. I'll open another one, and then so every 2 years it seems to be I evolve and do something else. So sadly COVID, but we were looking to open a third one. But COVID put a stop to that. So we'll see how we go.
So how long has it been since you opened the first PFP till now? Because you've got 2 at the moment, right?
Yeah. 10 years.
Okay, nice.
Around about 10 years.
Yeah, and so Harry and I train at your gym, Harry during the off season, and myself whenever I'm not training here, and like we love it because you've got all the sort of more, I suppose, functional, bit weirder training equipment. Like you've got the Atlas stones, you've got the rope hanging through the ceiling, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Is that just, that's the way you took your own training over the years, so you started including sort of different stuff?
Do you know what? No, I kind of, if you keep an open mind, you can see what's going on around you and then react to that. So initially I wanted it to be a kind of a gym where anyone could train, from an international athlete of any description down to someone just doing, looking good in shorts type of thing.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, because it was the only gym of its type in Exeter, it became a bit niche, and a lot of the strongmen came down, and the power lifters started coming down, Olympic lifters coming down. So I kind of went, all right, let's put platforms in, let's get some stones, and that's how it evolved. Where I think if I'd gone the other way and it was all meatheads gone in, I'd have gone, no, let's get some more lat pull down machines. And that's kind of how it works. So, and the rope going through the I saw that about 20 years ago in an American gym, and it was someone climbing up through the floor. And I went, that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a bit of a piece when you walk into the gym now, and people, it's all Royal Marines basically climbing up and down the ropes.
Did you have to make that hole?
Yeah.
That's quite a big project.
Yeah. Well, that's a mezzanine. That mezzanine wasn't there. That
Okay,
roof.
got you.
I know people will want, what the hell are we talking about?
Well, we'll link the gym in the show notes and stuff so people can have a look.
Shout out to the gym.
Now, people who are very intrigued, though, you get a load of hit on your website. One of the things one of the weird things, so obviously we do a lot of the strongman stuff, but what I love about PFP, or one of the things I love, is like all the old school bodybuilding equipment upstairs.
Yeah.
So it just reminds me of when I was like 16 to 18, first going to the gym and doing like 10 sets of 10 on the pec deck until my chest felt like it was going to explode, that sort of thing.
I'm very insulted. That's actually my best, smartest, shiniest kit. You've talked about that.
Do they require much upkeep? Them old bits of kit.
No,
seems to last a long time.
Yeah. Funnily enough, the older the kit, the longer they survive without me having to touch them. Really,
Built-in obsolescence.
They're just absolutely fine.
Is that obsolescence the right word?
No, well, I'm not
Obsolescence.
sure. What do you mean? Like they build in the new kit with?
Well, it's like with iPhones, you know.
Oh yeah. I know
they always break after a couple of years. Maybe there's
purposefully designed to break down.
To break, you had to buy some more techno equipment or something. Techno gym.
I wasn't sure exactly what you meant.
Techno gym is that coffee, mate.
So your conspiracy mind just ticking over there.
I wasn't sure what you meant there, so I just brushed over that.
Yeah, sorry. Techno gym, mate. Techno gym. That's where they used to have it.
James, bring it back to like your sort of progression, I suppose, as a coach. Like I know you've done loads of the Charles Poliquin certifications, and for our hits are about to go through the roof. The dogs are entering the room.
Yeah, there he is.
And that, like, for people that don't know, Charles Poliquin, arguably the best strength coach in the world, up until a few years ago when he passed away. But can you just dive into like a little bit more of the courses you've done there and like what you've gleaned from them?
I guess I've done loads of courses with him, and whether he's the best or not in the world, but he's certainly the most marketed, but he's very bright, crazy bright man.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky because I was your standard personal trainer, and I ended up doing a course by sheer luck over in Dublin with him as the main man for about a week. And of course I sat in this audience as a personal trainer who just thinks everything's 3 sets of 10 or 5x5 for strength, the standard.
Yeah.
And I was listening to him talking, and I was going, fuck, I do not know what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was sat there for about 10 minutes going, it's a week-long course. I thought, fuck. And then I thought, well, come on, pull your finger out. And then my pen was on fire, right? And then at night I'd revise it quite heavily. And then it got me thinking, I need to learn more stuff. I don't know shit.
Yeah.
And then went off and did what you might call his strength courses, which they were, back in those days, was called PICP 1, 2, 3. And then your biosignature, which I know we're probably going to talk about.
Yeah.
And then we talk about PIMPs, muscle release techniques, and they're all separate courses. And what it did do is opened your mind to more advanced ways of getting people fitter, stronger, leaner, healthier, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And he's got a really holistic and no bullshit way of doing things. So I was very thankful that I got in touch with, as part of his kind of gang, as it were, and learned so much from him. He was a terrible dictator, but he was a very, very clever boy. Yeah, really clever.
A dictator in what kind of his way or the highway? Never
speak ill of the dead, but he was.
R.I.P.
He was such a confident and clever bloke that he was almost charismatic in his when you listen to him, you kind of, whatever he says is true, that's fine, But later you do kind of, you come away from it and you go, okay, some of that stuff, was that right? perhaps not. But initially when you hear an expert, you go, oh, that's got to be right, and you got to just temper yourself that perhaps there's more ways to skin that cat. But
cult leaders, for the most part, are quite charismatic. They're normally quite sure of what they're saying.
Yes, for sure, he's a cult leader for sure. But as I say, I'm never speak ill, because I learned so much from him.
Yeah, definitely.
Massive amounts.
It's funny you say that, because I remember listening to a podcast with him talking on it, and he said about meditation and that how he'd heard about a study where they'd taken people saying a mantra over and over again, and then they just took a group of people and they got them to say some word like cauliflower over and over again, and basically had exactly the same effect. So he was like, mantras are, in his mind he was like, mantras are complete bullshit, and like a lot of people in sort of the more holistic fitness community would argue to the death over that.
You have to do the thing or whatever.
But I can imagine loads of people just listening to that and going, crossing mantras off their list.
And yet later on, as he went on, he was really big into all that kind of meditations. He really got into it, and he said one of the things later in life, he was saying one of the things he wished he had got into before was meditation and all that sort. So there you go.
It's interesting. So just diving into the biosignature stuff a little bit more. From what I understand, right, that is it 12 body sites that he takes kind of caliper measures at, and based on what your caliper measures are at different body sites, he can kind of assess your hormonal profiles without doing blood testing or anything like that.
Pretty much.
Is that it?
It's 12 different sites, whether it's needed to be 12 different sites or not, but let's talk about purely what you spoke about. We store fat or lose fat according to our hormonal profile, which sounds a bit out there, but of course if we look at that, and everyone can relate to this, I'm sure, nowadays, we spoke earlier off camera that young boys nowadays have got like man boobs at the age of 12. Well, why is that? It's because of the besogens and all that's, and or pretend estrogens in the system perhaps, as well as the calorific intake, of course. But why don't they? And then let's say you see some of the girls, especially, they're shredded six packs, but why are they carrying fat in the legs? There's got to be a reason for that. Why aren't you carrying that fat all over? Or and then let's say you've got skinny arms, skinny legs, but a fairly fat belly. Why haven't you got fat all over? So there's a reason.
That's the skinny fat look. The
skinny fat look, and also the pot belly look, and that's all cortisol related. So you can go into all sorts of weird, wonderful things. But if you understand basically that, you kind of go, oh yeah, I understand. There is a bit of that going on. Then you got to think to yourself, well, if it's just calories in, calories out, which is another thing we can talk about, but it may not. It's more to do with what our body does with the nutrition or lack thereof of what we're doing, and the stress of xenoestrogens and lack of testosterone, high estrogen load, high amounts of cortisol, how we digest our food, assimilate the food, and that coffee's kicking in.
It's only a matter of time for the lion's mane creeps up on you.
I'll have another one then.
So bringing it back to like an example that probably a lot of people watching would want to know about. So like, say for example, testosterone, right? That's a big one for guys, especially athletes. They want that optimized. What is a caliper test that they could do which would potentially signal that their testosterone levels are good, or they're subpar, or
so remember, this is at low level, at kind of like trainer coach level. We're not doctors, so you'd obviously want to get your bloods done, but at our level, there is, I think, a fairly valid way of doing it. And let's say, for example, we spoke at this biosignature thing, and we're storing fat according to hormonal profile. In Poliquin terminology, the mother site for all the other sites are taken from is your tricep site, and that, according to his and other people now, is where what your androgen levels. If you've got fat triceps compared to everywhere else, then it's an indication likely that your androgens are low, your testosterone's low. For example, I'll come back to that, but a female, for example, it's nearly impossible for her to have a tricep site of under 6 millimeters unless she's actually on steroids, unless her DHEA sulfate levels are really high. So you can see how, so let's say the rugby boys or whatever, or any athlete, you simply did their tricep site, and let's call it was 12 at the start of the season, and let's say they've rested and had 6 weeks off or whatever, and they've relaxed, so their androgens should be fairly recovered and fairly high. But let's say, okay, well, on day one when they get tested it's 12, fine, and then as they get beaten up through the 3 sessions a day and all that stuff, and then winter and all that stuff, their testosterone their cortisol will rise exponentially, because you're playing every week and training and all that business. And if cortisol rises, testosterone has to drop off, because they're made from the same pregnenolone, they're made from the same raw materials.
So they effectively sit on like a seesaw, right?
Pretty much.
Cortisol comes up, testosterone goes down. Okay,
and there's more to it because it steals the raw materials, but that's basically what happens. So as stress, doesn't have to be an athlete, anyone, as stress rises chronically, I'm talking about, not just a stress of one thing, your testosterone has to come down. So from the coach's point of view, or you lads, you simply take someone's tricep site and then 6 weeks later test it again. If it's going up, then why is that going up? Is it low testosterone? Is he eating the wrong thing? Is he not resting enough? Is he mitigating cortisol after the game? Maybe taking a recovery shake? Whatever, meditation, getting out in nature, all that stuff, deep breathing, or is cortisol just popped up, or testosterone down, basically? And you can check it out. And I think that's a fairly valid way to measure it at our level, not doctor level,
without doing the blood work.
Yeah, without. And I think that's pretty valid. I think most people, if you accept the fact that there is a hormonal profile to where we store fat, and you agree that the androgen site is your tricep site, which Poliquin says, and why would you not believe the guy? Then I think that's a fairly valid measurement, surely, wouldn't?
Well, it would be interesting to test that, wouldn't it, with someone, for example, a rugby team would be a great example. If you did do all their calipers at the start of the season and you did their bloods, and then you watched as maybe they did gain more fat on their tricep throughout the season, and kept testing the bloods maybe every 3 months and see if that tallied up. But I'm sure Poliquin, that advice that he's handing out is based on data, I would imagine. I don't
think he pulled it up his ass.
Yeah, exactly.
From your experience, and this isn't necessarily had to be related to athletes or whatever, but from your experience, what is the leading cause in causing males to have low testosterone, would you say?
That's a fairly detailed question. I think high cortisol, because we're all living high stress life, and then high estrogen, but we'll deal with the cortisol first, I guess. So bear in mind, cortisol and testosterone are made from the same stuff, pretty much. How much of that stuff you go towards testosterone, and how much goes towards cortisol depends on how stressed you are. So if I'm leading this high stress life, I'm living with my missus, I hate the girl, don't sleep right, my kids are driving me insane, I hate my job, I'm eating high carbohydrates or processed food or all these things, I'm not being accountable to myself, I'm not self-aware, keeping grateful diary, all that stuff. My micronutrients are crap, like I don't take magnesium, don't take zinc. Then you're on a beat, and you're training actually really hard all the time, chronically elevated training, especially aerobic output rather than anaerobic, high-end aerobic, blown out your ass training. Then I think that's going to cause chronic high cortisol, which therefore must equate to chronically low testosterone. And then the other thing is the estrogen. Nowadays, in the environment we live in, everything is a toxin. I hate the word toxic load and detoxification, but back in when we were cavemen, I don't know what toxic load we had to deal with, not much, I guess. But now even the plastic we're drinking, the water we're drinking is full of garbage and also full of xenoestrogens, the air we're breathing, receipts we take, there's everything we touch, smell, ingest, even stuff we see on TV, that's a stressor. And that causes an estrogen load. So if, I might be waffling on here, but if I've got an estrogen load, my liver is the main chelator of estrogen or toxicity. My liver is the main thing. That's why your products are so good. And if my liver gets overloaded because I'm no longer a caveman, but I'm dealing with all these massive influx of toxicity, xenoestrogen, pretend estrogens, then that toxic thing has to go somewhere. It doesn't just dissipate and bugger off into the ether. And what the body normally does is it wraps it up in adipose tissue and stores it. And where it stores it is a la female, because it's a xenoestrogen. So we store it as a female would store in our hips, in our boobs, and that's how we talk about estrogen, how it affects body composition. So I think estrogen, high environmental estrogens, and low and high cortisol are the two main drivers for poor testosterone.
When you're talking about TV raising, is that any TV or is that Love Island?
Oh, if you watch Love Island, your estrogen's really high. You should be watching, yeah, exactly. But actually,
guilty pleasure.
Everyone says that, but no every episode. Well, interestingly, that you talk about what you can really go into it, and then talk about Wi-Fi. And that because Wi-Fi is all around us all the time. What's that doing? We're electrical beings, aren't we? Right?
We are electrical beings, yeah.
And we're having a Wi-Fi constantly at us all the time, so that's affecting our cortisol levels. So it's low level, and it's these tiny percentages of stuff that build up. It's like athletes, isn't it? One of the tiny percentages is what makes the big thing. So at night, if I remember, I turn off my router downstairs.
Yeah.
And I usually sleep better if my router's not on. Weirdly.
Yeah.
Whether that's just a bit placebo, I don't know.
Psychosomatic or something like that.
But if you think dim your lights in your house, do that, and that'll reduce your cortisol. Write a grateful log every night. What am I grateful for today? Turn off your Wi-Fi. Don't watch TV. I mean, all this stuff we all know, type of thing. But take magnesium. That's a massive one in my opinion.
Well, just on that, so like the way I understand it is that with cortisol, sort of ancestrally, right, for the vast majority of human existence, we'd have had these high cortisol events. So whether you're getting raided by another tribe, or you're getting attacked by an animal, or you're on a hunt, like you've got this short burst where your cortisol goes through the roof, and then after it dissipates, and you see this in the wild with animals, where there'll be a chase, a lion chasing a zebra or whatever it is, and if the zebra escapes, within 30 seconds it kind of just shudders it out, and then it's chilling again, right? And that's cortisol would have been through the roof, and then it drops down. And we're kind of designed for that. But in modern society, we're faced with all these things that you've just touched on, a load of them there, and because of that, our cortisol is constantly elevated at quite a high level. And having your cortisol at a high level leads to inflammation in the body. Not only your testosterone being low, which a lot of athletes and just men in general would want to optimize, but it also leads to high inflammation in the body, and it's just going to lead to overall de-optimization of a load of different bodily functions.
Actually, cortisol is savage, because not only does it, firstly, cortisol's not the enemy, because we're designed to have cortisol first thing in the morning. Your testosterone and cortisol should be high, which is a bit weird because they're made from the same thing, but bit crude. But a bloke who's under 30 should wake up with a boner. If you don't, your testosterone's low. So that's another acid test for you.
A bunch of people just panicking listening to this podcast.
Oh shit!
Oh dear, I shouldn't have scratched that.
No, mate, it had to be said.
Yeah, I don't know if it hadn't really had to be said. But anyway, so my point is, cortisol is obviously, we need cortisol first thing in the morning, otherwise you never get out of bed, so get you out of bed. And then cortisol in training is a really good idea, because you want that. It's an energy releaser, isn't it? That's what it's for. It releases energy so you can do stuff, fight or flight. But as you rightly say, if it's constantly elevated all the time, it's death by 1,000 cuts. And what that does, along with all the other stuff for lowering testosterone, it also depletes our ability to digest nutrients, because constantly elevated cortisol reduces stomach acid. So of course stomach acid is the ground zero really for all other things. So if I haven't got enough stomach acid to digest the gold standard food I'm eating, well, that then goes through my gut lining, and then I can cause inflammation and a whole host of eczema, asthma, inflammatory responses, whatever it might be, achy joints, which is definitely can be attributed to inflammation, as well as doing thousands of squats. But
Well, that's one thing I noticed just on that last point is 100% when I eat a lot of processed sugar, I always wake up the next day and I feel achy and stiff in my body, like I need to stretch it out. That's one thing I definitely resonate with.
And also cortisol makes you stupid because it affects your brain function as well as... No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say anything about vegans.
This is what Harry did the other week. Harry started telling the story and then immediately regretted, but we forced him through it.
I saw that. But it does, because you get brain fog. Because when you're stressed, you forget your car keys. We should be quite calm. And interestingly, a person with high testosterone is normally very calm.
Yeah.
Counterintuitively, you think they'd be really aggressive, but actually not necessarily the case. Normally they're pretty calm.
Is this something, because obviously you've got a couple of your 2 children, right? Do you... I would have thought you would have had this in your mind when you're raising your kids and stuff, and you wanted to be really healthy and active, all this kind of stuff. How much of you do you have to watch what they do to make sure they're living like a healthy lifestyle? Because I imagine that raising kids in today's society, it's a lot easier, or it's far more expedient for them to be unhealthy or constantly looking at a screen or eating processed foods or whatever. Do you have to watch that quite a bit? Do you have quite strict guidelines?
I wish I was better at it, I've got to say. When they're being born and all that, I had this, you're only going to eat chewed up steak for breakfast and you're only going to eat chicken puree for all that stuff, but the reality is nowadays if they haven't got the bloody laptop, it's a difficulty. And and if they have if it's going to go out, you're going to get them ice cream, of course you are. But I generally do try. So for example, my kids, Oscar, the younger one, he's 8, he'll have probably heart. If he's with me, he'll have heart for breakfast. And I don't want to sound like this wanker father who doesn't give his kids any things, but he'll have heart or sausage and eggs, but there'll be decent sausage and decent eggs. And the other fella, he'll have sausage and bacon or something, and olives. He loves those. So to answer your question, I try. I usually fail, but
what's that? Ox heart? Is that ox heart?
He's not big enough to have a full ox heart, but he has a lamb's heart, it's a bit easier.
I can't. How do you cook that?
I think there's millions of ways. I'm a terrible cook, but all I do is slice it up. So the top bit of the heart, I slice that off where all the ventricles and all that stuff is, and then you're left with the pure meat, and you slice that up into dices and stir fry it in lard or something.
Tallow, if you will.
Tallow.
Not vegetable oil.
definitely not vegetable oil. Not even butter occasionally. Anyway, I fry it up, salt and pepper, job done.
That's that was one thing Poliquin was massive on it. Really high fat, high protein breakfast.
Yeah.
And the guy I study under, Jake, he's really big on it, and the idea behind it is that I can't remember the compound now, but it's basically got the red meat's got dopamine precursors in. So sitting alongside what you said, get up in the morning, you've got high cortisol, which is going to give you the energy to get up and get after it. And then you combine that with a breakfast high in red meat, which has got all the dopamine precursors. And dopamine's the the reward hormone, right? It's the neurotransmitter, which gives you the when you're ticking off all your to-dos on your to-do list, it's giving you that drive to keep going.
Yeah, it's neural drive.
Yeah, so combining cortisol in the morning with the dopamine is a nice recipe.
So what you do is, if we look further back, when you've got high, your insulin should be low in the morning, and you want to keep it low, rather than jumping out of bed and having a porridge and oats and cereal for breakfast, which spikes your insulin. You want to keep it low. And also you want your yang neurotransmitters, dopamine and acetylcholine, that's what you're talking about, and they will only kick in if you're purely having fats and protein. So steak and nuts was Poliquin's go-to. I like kind of mince and liver or something, whatever it might be, with a steak with some fish eggs on top and an egg.
Yeah,
that's a great breakfast.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point being, you want to keep your neurotransmitters, which are yang, perky, dopamine, acetylcholine high, and that gives you the drive. And then after training, or after work, or whenever you're relaxing in the evening to calm you down and help you sleep again, recovery, then you want to kick in serotonin and GABA, and they're kicked in by carbs.
Yeah.
So I think we've got ass about face, because we all read Muscle and Fitness back in the day. You know, everyone has oats for breakfast with banana and all that stuff, but that's, yeah, okay, it refills your glycogen stores if that's a thing, but it also kicks in GABA, you know, this. So you go to work, and 20 minutes later you want a cigarette and a cup of coffee, and another donut.
And so one of the other things, so that is has been a massive game changer for me, because I ate carnivore for about a month last Christmas, and then I was pretty strict with my ketosis after that, and I was finding I was waking up in the night, and I think, and then I started including some carbohydrate in my evening meals, and it's really helped improve my sleep.
I'd agree with that.
And the other thing as well is I'm quite a yang individual naturally, and I've started, instead of eating, I was eating red meat every meal, and I've started eating white meat in my evening meals, and again it's got tryptophan in, another precursor to serotonin, so between those two things it's really improved my sleep.
So would you, so the classic model, the Muscle and Fitness model, is have the carbohydrate in the mornings for your glycogen stores up. You'd say almost flip that on his head.
Completely. Yeah, I really do.
Do you feel that you would initially, when you did that, do you think that especially if you're doing high intensity exercise, that might, because that's the line that an individual will be told, I suppose, that if you're doing high intensity exercise, you need to have your glycogen stores filled in order to do that. Do you think that you can basically increase your tolerance to high intensity exercise, or do you think it's just, it just doesn't exist, that you can do all this stuff on purely high protein, high fat?
That's another long question to answer, but it's a great thing. So we think we need our glycogen stores to be full in order to have high intensity exercises, and I think if you're not fat adapted, that is probably true. But if you go through a kind of a harsh period of 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, they say 21 days is about the average of being completely cold turkey, then your body will be forced to using ketones and fatty acids as their fueling source, as well as breaking down some protein in the liver to produce the small amount of glycogen you need, so that the liver can do that via protein gluconeogenesis. So if you are really fat adapted, then you probably don't need to use carbohydrates at all, in my opinion. But I would, for let's say a glycolic sport, then I don't see why you wouldn't use them. I think you should use them, see what I mean? So, but I would use, let's say we're talking about you, for example, I would try to get you not to use any carbohydrates in the morning at all until you've done your day's work or some of your day's work, and thereafter add carbohydrates, either bolus doses after training or bolus doses after training and in the evening. And then you're topping up your glycogen stores and you're kind of fat adapted-ish. So hybrid it.
So surely, like, so someone eats carbohydrate in the evening, help with sleep, like we just talked about. Then by the time they wake up in the morning, say, what time is your first training session at?
Probably like 7 or 8, I'd say. At the minute, it's earlier than the minute. So we're doing swimming twice a week at 7, or it'll be around like 8:30.
And what about in the season?
10.
10, okay. So
10.
Let's use that because it's just easier for the purpose of this. So when would you eat your breakfast?
We normally have around 8:30 at the club.
Yeah, okay. So for personally, if I was in your position, I would still have a high fat protein breakfast at that 8:30, and then and remember, your carbohydrate stores aren't going to be completely depleted because you've eaten them the evening before, or you've then slept, and then maybe just before I was going into that session, maybe I'd slam a couple of tablespoons of honey or something like that, just top it up with something like super fast glycolytic, and then fill your boots after your training session, especially if you're doing 2 a days and you need to re-expand later in the day. It
just is bizarre, I suppose, or not bizarre, it, like hearing it like that in layman's terms, I suppose, makes, or mostly layman's terms, I'm not too hot on all the glycolytics and your acetals, or what those words mean, but
I think you can
inverse,
do it, like, you could probably do it half-assed though, so it depends really what you want to achieve. If you really want it pre-season, it's probably a bit too late now, but let's say your time off, when you want to relax, maybe you want to dial it in a little bit, so you'd probably just plow through the whole of the day until you're finished with 0 carbs, if you want to make it real simple, because you're carrying 2,000 2,500 calories worth of glycogen in your liver and your muscle, right? So that's a reasonable amount, but it's a finite amount. It is a finite amount which can go. But if you're fat adapted, don't forget protein and fats can become gluconeogenesis, produce glucose for you if you're out completely. Because only a couple of things in the body need glucose, like red blood cells,
parts of the brain, isn't it?
Parts of the brain, which work quite well on ketones as well. But so carbs aren't the enemy for sure. But I think strategically having them after training is what I'd do, and again in the evening. And the carb of choice would be honey and white rice.
Yeah, I know. It's weird with the white rice because it's like, as I said, it's like another inverse. You're told like when you're doing GCSE PE, eat brown rice, brown pasta, but now no pasta, either white nor brown.
Never
just leave it. Is this because white rice is the most natural? I'm not sure. Like, what's the?
It's really easy to digest.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah. That's what I prefer.
Kind of made famous by Stan Efferdin with the whole vertical diet, where it's just like white rice and steak. Basically, had all the strong men eating that.
Not like pizzas and like spaghetti hoops on toast.
There is another aspect to that whole, which is another rabbit hole we could go down. Because brown rice, one of the things that the geeks like me would talk about the anti-nutrients, and phytic acid and lectins and I've forgotten. Think of it in a minute. But white rice has got all the husk taken off it, so there's no gut irritants, there's no anti-nutrients in there. It's just the glucose, which is fine, which is after all what you really want. And it relaxes you, calms you down, serotonin, recovery, so why the hell not? But if you'd really been geeky, you could go completely cold turkey and just eat animals, and that would do the trick. But is that Murphy wrecking the place, is he?
Well, here's just quickly on the nutrition thing. We've been doing some training down in the sorry, very scarp, and then just made me crack. Not the glass over, just legged it out.
He's gone, he's off.
Yeah, he's knows what he's done. No. So we've been doing some training down at Lympston in the morning with swimming, and there's a couple of the S&Cs at the club who are ex-Marines, and they said that when you're in the armed forces, the attitude they have is just calories in, because you're doing such a high level of exercise. Do you feel that they're doing that out of choice and branding it as or just they're doing it out of necessity and branding it as choice because of a funding situation, and they're basically trying to do the cheapest food for the most gain, I suppose, for the most like bulk?
I think two things. One is certainly funding is a massive issue, of course.
Yeah.
And secondly, there's probably, I mean, I've left now for 10 years, but when I was in it, we thought that, rice, pasta, cereal, bread was the fuel, because it gives you, tops it with glycogen, your glycogen, and it gives you glucose and therefore glycogen, therefore energy. And before we were doing an 8 mile or a 10 mile or whatever it might be the night before, and then that breakfast would have cereals and all that stuff, because that's what we thought was correct. And I think it's just times are changing, and people maybe, if they had unlimited expenses or money, I think they'd probably consider it to be a bit more kind of protein and fat, I would say. Interestingly, I did a lecture to the Royal Marine MLs, those boys, the mountain leaders.
No.
They're kind of, they take the boys and do all the mountain training and mountain leadership stuff and all that. So they're pretty physical boys, and they do a lot of Norway stuff, Arctic stuff. And we were so I gave a lecture on nutrition. I was talking about, Scott of the Antarctic and, pemmican and, fats and protein and blah, 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 and how it's, no one needed an energy bar back in those days and how they dealt with it. And they were completely on board. Well, they said they were completely on board what I was saying, but they said, we just can't afford to steak and nuts for breakfast, and we just can't.
Yeah,
it's fair enough.
I've got a bit of a theory on it as well, where like in the UK especially, bodybuilding was like the first sport to really kind of make its name in the training world. You know what I mean? You don't really hear about what rugby teams are doing behind the scenes in the gym.
No.
And it was the bodybuilding mags that everyone saw, and that's kind of what they base their training off. The average bloke, especially going to the gym.
True.
And like bodybuilders, I completely get why they eat so many carbohydrates, because they're in, they go through massive blocks of where they want to put on a huge amount of muscle mass.
Yeah.
And you probably couldn't eat that amount of calories that they need to get in if they were eating high fat diet, because fat's so much more satiating than carbohydrates. Everyone knows you can eat a bag of Oreos and you want to eat another bag, but you're not going to eat, I don't know, avocado after avocado. It's not. It's just not the same thing.
Why would you?
And so I think and the problem is so many people have taken that bodybuilding model and just pushed that into other areas of health and fitness. And I think now, especially in the US, like people are starting to unwind that thought process, and a lot of people are coming more around to the way you're thinking, and is slowly permeating, into the UK health and fitness scene. But yeah, what do you think? That's accurate?
I think very accurate, to be fair. And even personal training, it's still 3 sets of 10 or 5 sets of 5. That's pretty much all you learn initially, And carbohydrates, you need that to fill your muscles. Interestingly, there's 2 types of, if we're talking about hypertrophy for muscle development, there's myofibril and sarcoplasmic. So myofibril is simply the muscle fiber, the actin and myosin getting thicker and or more of them, so the actual muscle fibers. But then sarcoplasmic is all the other stuff around the fibers, and that they expand when we've got water and glycogen in there. So you can see why a bodybuilder would probably think, well, I'll have some carbs because it'll fill me up, give me that pump thing. So I understand that. But then from a power output point of view, remember, power usually comes from the brain nervous system, right? Mm-hmm. And what if something drives the brain better, lion's mane, then your power output should be better. So if you are actually an out and out, let's say bobsleigh or whatever, which is pure power, you're not, he doesn't have to have full glycogen stores to wrap out. He just needs 3 seconds of absolute maximum power, which is neural energy, neural output. So the neural drive from a high fat, high protein meal would be better suited for him before he pushes the sled. And
especially in those sort of sports where, like, those guys, they're big muscular guys, but they're not looking to get absolutely, they need to fit in the sled, and there's a trade-off between, they need to be a certain speed and stuff, so they don't want to get too big. And it's way easier to manage your weight when you're not banging carbohydrates all the time. Because fat and protein are so satiating, you can be way more in control of your diet. I think that's something that I experienced massively when I switched from eating, the rugby mindset of eating carbs, that phrase of like being hangry or whatever, hungry and angry, that when I needed to eat every 3 to 4 hours, otherwise I just shut down, my brain wouldn't work, and I was just like, I needed food. And Izzy will tell you, like, the amount of times where it's just like, she knows I would get to a point where it was like, it's pointless, I'm useless until I'm refed, and that's gone now. I can fast for, I don't know, the other day I did like 20 hours just breezy, so it makes a difference in so many regards. And then we can go going into that. I know we touched on this before, but like fasting's so powerful in terms of general health, in terms of autopathy and cell death.
You have a just going back slightly, what you're saying about that is there's a trade-off, I feel, from a bodybuilder point of view. There's a trade-off between having to eat every 2.5 to 3 to 4, whatever it's going to be, and your health. So although you're kicking an mTOR, this muscle protein synthesis thing, it kicks in, mTOR kicks in, which therefore muscle protein synthesis, and that's a good thing if you want to build massive muscles or whatever, to kick that in every 3 hours or whatever. So you take on board protein carbs, whatever. But that, I think that as a trade-off from health. So you can be jacked, but maybe not the healthiest thing, because you're always spiking insulin, and then it's coming, glucagon kicks in, insulin, glucagon, and all that business. So I think fasting is where that was a massively important thing, because after all, if we go back in our history, I don't think any animal or human would go hunting when he's full. He probably sits and relaxes for a bit, and then he goes hunting when he's hungry. And then I guess I'll talk about this if you don't mind. It's then ghrelin kicks in, this hormone ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, and that kicks in. And what does that do? If you're fat adapted, which is quite important to remember, that if you're fat adapted, ghrelin will increase your neural output and increase your sensory perception.
Yeah.
Which, of course, when you're hunting makes sense, right? Your eyesight's better, your hearing's better, your neural output's better, therefore your strength is better. So you can see, if we look at evolution, if you're fat adapted, being hungry will make you stronger.
Yeah.
It's it's an evolutionary, makes sense.
What's the, I don't know if you've seen on Instagram, a lot of celebrities are pushing these ketone salts. Do they work?
I don't know what that is. What do you mean, like
ketone?
Actually taking exogenous ketones?
I think so. Yeah, is that right, Josh?
So I actually know the story behind this. It's a really interesting one. So basically, it's to do with the Navy SEALs in the US. So there's a guy called Dominic D'Agostino who's kind of the world's foremost researcher in ketones. And with the Navy SEALs in the US, they were having an issue where a lot of the guys that were doing stealth missions underwater, they'd be using oxygen rebreathers because obviously they don't want the bubbles going to the surface. But when you're doing that, there's a really high likelihood that people were having seizures. So they basically brought in a group of neuroscientists, the Navy SEAL commanders or whatever, to analyze this and go, right, how can we get around this problem of these guys doing the stealth missions and having the seizures? And Dominic D'Agostino was one of the neuroscientists they brought in, but he was also, a muscle and fitness like nerd. He loved like Arnie back in the days, like a big bodybuilder kind of guy. And when he was starting to research into it, because of his understanding of nutrition, he'd read about the ketogenic diet and its ability to help, because it was the ketogenic diet in like the 60s was the main treatment for people with epilepsy.
Yep.
But it's like nutritional ketosis, I think it's like 90% of your calories are coming from fat or some very high number.
Cool. That would be quite hard.
It's like extremely hard. But like when people have got severe epilepsy, and they're having epileptic fits, the point where they might die, people are willing to go to these extremes. So he went and pitched this to the commanders, and they would go, yeah, great, but our whole setup is people just smashing carbs all day.
Yeah.
Can you make this into a pill? It's classic modern medicine. So he went away and he developed ketone salts, which I've taken them, and they spike your ketones through the roof. So when I was following ketogenic diet really sort of strictly, and I was doing a targeted ketogenic diet, so I would eat a baseline of 50 grams of carbs a day, usually in the form of like fruit and vegetables, and then I would add another 50 grams of carbs, another 100 grams of carbs around my training sessions. But when I was doing that, the deepest I was kind of naturally getting into ketosis of around like 1 millimolar, but I was like measuring my blood ketones. When you take the ketone salts, you go straight up to like 2.5.
No way.
You fly through the roof, and you feel it as well. It's a mad nootropic. Like you feel very energized. And obviously with those, you can basically effectively have dual fuel, because your carbohydrate stores can be through the roof.
Still the same.
And you take these ketone salts, and all of a sudden you've got really high ketones and really high glycogen. So, you're performing on dual fuel effectively.
That's never heard of it, apart from exogenous ketones, but which is kind of the holy grail. When people talk about metabolic flexibility, they're talking about exactly that thing, aren't they? You can dip in and out.
Yep.
But I think you can only dip in and out if you're already fat adapted. So, well, actually, maybe not. Now that you've said that.
Yeah, well, this is a point I was kind of making to Harry the other day, was that a lot of research is coming out now showing that ketones are like neuroprotective when people have got like problems with CTE. So if you take a head knock and you're on a concussion protocol for 10 days, your brain finds it difficult to take in glucose, but it can still take in ketones. So one of my things I always say to athletes is it's worth getting fat adaptive, whether that's eating higher fat on your off days or during the off season or whatever. So if you do take a head knock, you can more easily drop yourself into ketosis, and then your brain can run on ketones and feed the energy, feed itself energy while it recovers, as opposed to trying to get glucose in when it's glucose impaired and further causing damage.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, it's they say that kind of even medical issues with the brain have helped with trying to be in ketosis. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So just kind of like recapping a little bit. So one of the things we started with was, obviously you talked a lot about like cortisol and testosterone. Have you got when people come to you, obviously everything's like very individualized and like person specific. But if someone was to come to you and say like, what are your few main tools for managing stress for the average person? What are the things you sort of send people away with?
Yeah, I've different approaches. So I think the first thing is talk about lifestyle. So I think probably the most, might be a bit out there to say this, but probably the most damaging thing for anyone's hormonal output, whatever it might be, is being in a relationship that's incorrect.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that. So,
but that's a hard sell.
I know it's a hard sell. So I'm really sorry, mate. You've got to ditch the missus. But I do think that's a massive thing. So I just maybe mentioned something like that, but I don't, So what I'm trying to say is lifestyle.
Yeah.
And if you're always on, you're going to burn yourself out, and your adrenals are going to be shot to shit. I also try to make them eat the standard, less carby, sugary shit, and more good quality nutrition. So pretty basic. So lifestyle, nutrition.
Just unpacking that one a little bit more. Like I think for someone that doesn't know what you're good, what would a day of eating look like for you?
Okay, for me, yeah. So truthfully, let's take this morning. This morning was venison steak with some fish eggs on top of it and a duck egg. Breakfast.
Fried duck egg.
Fried duck egg.
That sounds unbelievable.
It's really good.
That sounds quite nice actually. Yeah. Salivating a little bit.
And coffee, because I won't operate without coffee. And just, it used to be cream, but I just have a bit of milk. So that's breakfast. And then, because I'm then at work or out doing whatever.
And you train at, you can always do a session down at PFP.
But if I'm not doing this, let's say I'm just eating, then it would be a box of food, and normally it would be some form of white meat, chicken or whatever, with some olives chucked in and some gherkins. So it's non-offensive non-offensive, what I call non-offensive veggies.
By non-offensive, you mean like low in anti-nutrients?
Yeah, what I consider it to be not fuck me up. It doesn't cause me any gut distress at all. And I'm, gherkins or avocado or olives, cucumber, all that stuff. And gherkins, cucumberish, isn't it? I think, whatever.
Yeah.
So that would be breakfast. And I've got some lunch, and that's still some in the van. And then the evening, tonight, it's mince with chopped up heart, and then I'll have, if I train later, which I probably will, then I'll have some rice with that.
Yeah.
Or as a dessert in the evening when I'm watching TV at 9 o'clock, I'll have some rice and yogurt and some honey. So there's my carby bit.
Yeah.
And the thing about the carby bit, there's 3 rules really, in my opinion. It's, you have to deserve them, i.e. you've got to have trained that day.
Yeah.
You have to be lean enough for the nutrition partition to take place, and I'll come back to that. And or you have to not really give a toss if you get fat.
Yeah.
So they're the 3 rules, really. So if you're lean enough and you've trained, then fill your boots. And why not? There's nothing wrong with carbs, is there? It's just the type. What did I say there that was a bit weird?
Well, one of the questions I had that popped up was, and because I drone on about this all the time, but it'd be nice to hear someone else do it for me. So why do you include heart in there? What's the benefits of that?
Well, actually, all often good lead on there. If let's say you talk about someone who is a complete carnivore zealot and just eats steak, and we know there's some people out there that do that, and they seem to be thriving, but in reality, likely we're designed to eat nose to tail, or nose to tail. And you see that in nature all the time. And normally the alpha of the pack goes in and doesn't bother with the muscle meat necessarily. He goes and eats the innards, of which can be spleen, heart, kidney.
Tripe, bit of tripe there.
Yeah, absolutely. All that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sold on tripe just yet.
Either.
Neither Josh either, is a poser.
But they do all that stuff because that's a nutrient dense part, and then got a heart. It's got lots of CoQ10 in it.
Yeah.
Which if you eat heart, helps the heart. If you eat liver, it helps the liver. If you eat kidney, it helps your kidneys. If you eat brain, it helps your brain. Why? It's omega-3s. Mm-hmm. So at that basic level, and then if you eat the bone marrow, that's how we evolved anyway, by eating the bone marrow initially, and that's how our brain developed. So I'm waffling a little bit, but
no, it's all good stuff.
Eat all of nose to tail, and then if we look at the nutrient. If I only eat steak, then I'm going to be fairly high in methionine, whereas actually that can be a bit of a problem. You also want to have glycine or collagen, and collagen comes from the whole of the animal.
Yeah.
So it's not rocket science. And if you then break that down, there's 10 parts of methionine to 1 part of collagen. Is that right? Anyway, the point being, eat the whole of the bloody animal, and then you're getting everything.
Yeah.
And interestingly, if we know that the liver, the heart, all that stuff, but certainly the liver, if you're going to have one thing, it would be the liver, because that is all the nutrients you need and stuff. Pretty much.
Yeah, and it's important for people. I was saying to someone the other day, like, as we age, we lose bone density. So like, it's important to be eating bone and calcium and getting that stuff into your diet so you can rebuild your bone, so you lose it to a lesser extent. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it sounds really, it's ancient wisdom that like the Native Americans used to talk about and stuff. But their philosophy was like for like. If you got someone with a bad heart, feed them a healthy heart.
That's absolutely true.
And it's like the latest science is coming out and showing, well, actually that's what happens. If you eat heart, the amino acids from that will preferentially go and fill your own heart.
It's CoQ10. Heart. When you eat heart, it's got high amounts of CoQ10, which is what drives the heart energy. So yeah.
It's fascinating.
So going back to your 3 points there, the 3 pillars, if you will, about the carbohydrate intake. If someone wasn't lean enough, you'd say don't fill your boots, and don't eat carbs until you are lean enough.
Or if they didn't care, let's say they had to maintain a certain weight for whatever, and they'd trained, but they weren't at, let's say, a threshold of 12% body fat, or whatever number you decide. But it didn't matter, because if by not eating those carbohydrates, would it impair their performance and drop their weight down? If the answer is yes, we'll have the carb.
Okay.
So, but I do still think you have to deserve them, and you have to have done some form of physical activity in order to allow yourself to have them. So it's a bit like you have to earn it at the very least. But there would be the 3 pillars. If someone wants to get ripped up, I'd say you have to be lean enough, you have to have trained quite hard that day, and or your sport or your activity would be impaired if you didn't ingest carbs. And but it's likely that some sports, carbs aren't the enemy. They're going to help for sure.
Yeah. In terms of the number of carbs, so say you were dealing with an athlete, they've done one hard gym session that day, they get to the evening time, it's time for them to fill their boots. Are you basing that number, like, say you would just chuck an arbitrary number out there, or would you base that on how much they weigh?
No, I am very unscientific when it comes to that, to be fair. I just say crack on.
Yeah, okay, as much as
do it how you like.
Yeah, okay.
So because most people aren't gonna, maybe you're not gonna eat a massive bowl of rice. Maybe you will.
Well, that's the thing as well.
Maybe I probably would.
It brings it back to the point of real food, right? If you say fill your boots with Oreos, someone could eat packs and packs and packs. Whereas if it's real food, if it's rice and a bit of fruit or whatever,
I think you're probably right.
Your satiety messages in your body are going to be saying, right, that's enough at some point anyway.
Yeah. So I should know, and I should be able to give you a decent answer to that. But I guess if I wiggle out of that question a little bit by saying we can only store 2,500 calories depending how big or small you are. Harry will carry more than me, for example. Call it 2,500 calories worth, and we know we get 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates. So then you can work out, maybe if it's completely depleted, what you want. Do the maths.
Okay, got you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I'll let you do the maths. But in real world, I don't worry about it too much.
Yeah, okay.
Unless someone really wants to, and I've trained a couple of people that cut around, the bodybuilding stuff, and then I'm a little bit more specific. But they only take on board carbs maybe once every 4 days, in the evening only, and it's one meal. It's really strict.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah. And in terms of just another little side note, like in terms of if you had an athlete and they came in and they were like, all right, how much protein should I be eating a day?
Yeah.
How much would you be advising? 2.2 grams per kilogram?
That's probably the more important question, because I think everything cascades from there. So if you get someone's protein intake correct from animal sources, we can debate that, of course, but then everything else is side to that.
Yeah.
So the answer is what I normally give. If if someone's not a super duper athlete, they're just normal people, I say aim for about 1.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. If you are out and about, let's say you're doing 2 sessions a day, 3 sessions a day, or whatever you're doing, then 2 grams per kilo is probably not enough.
Yeah, okay.
I would even do 3.
Yeah.
If you can
Really?
get it down,
Nice,
it's savage. But I think actually people would disagree with me, but I think more is probably better. So long as you can digest it, which comes back to this whole thing is, so I'm giving you the gold standard of eating, this 400 grams of ground mince 3 times a day type of thing, but your digestive system isn't able to take it. We should be able to eat the whole of the elephant we've just killed.
Yeah.
If you think.
Yeah.
Because otherwise no animal would have gone, oh, that's my 40 grams of protein right there.
Yeah, I think that's bollocks.
Yeah, it's got to be.
I'm not basing it off anything. I think that's absolute horseshit. Whenever I heard that, I'm like, and do you know why? Because this dude who used to go to Loughborough, and he was massive. No, I forget the big Viking bodybuilder.
Rich, the bench press.
His name was Josh.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
and I used to see him eating these massive Tupperwares that I imagine were quite smelly, full of like eggs and all manner of things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's more than 30 grams of protein in that, and surely he's not just like pissing it all out or getting rid of it. Like, is that just bollocks?
I do believe that we are designed, otherwise we wouldn't survive, would we? We're designed to kill that animal and then eat till we've had enough and then waddle off and lie down. You know what I mean? Which is what we just, and therefore, if you ingest a shitload of it, it just takes longer to absorb. It's not going to like do anything weird. It just takes longer to absorb because it has to break it down. Which brings me back to this whole thing of the stomach acid. This digestive ability is massive. And certainly for boys that are in a combat environment, sport, military, whatever, that's highly full on all the time, the cortisol release, digestive enzymes will help you guys, because very often your digestive ability is scuppered slightly. But we should be able to eat the whole of the bloody animal, in my opinion, and as I say, not have to eat again until we're hungry, and then when we're hungry, our ghrelin kicks in, our sensory perception, see how it all ties back.
Yeah.
And then we go hunting when we're hungry again. Oh shit, I haven't actually got anything to eat this time because I cocked up the hunt. I'll have to fast for a day or 2 or 3, or I'll eat some tubers or some berries or something else that I've gathered.
Yeah.
But my primary focus is trying to get an animal.
Yeah.
Not to call it any diet in particular.
I'm gonna get in trouble.
Do you feel that these fats, namely animal fats, are, I don't know, essential for to live an optimized existence, I suppose, as a human being?
Yeah, and also for body and brain function, I think animals and parts thereof are vital. And I think also from a brain chemistry point of view, if you don't eat, I'm going to get so much trouble. If you don't eat animals, I think you are going to be less agreeable, shall we say?
From a hormonal perspective as well, right? We build all our hormones from fat. You build your sex hormones from fat.
Everything's derived from all hormones have got all hormones are made or moved. I'm not sure all, but a shitload of hormones are made and moved with fats and protein.
Yeah,
they're not made of spinach.
Yeah,
this seems undeniable. What's the counter argument here? Like, I don't really understand. I almost wish there was someone here to offer a week.
There's got to be someone saying that's bollocks. You're talking shite.
I promise you, I've read a few blog posts and threads, and the counter argument is very, very. It's a straw man you can blow over fairly easily. Yeah. There's not much depth to it. One of the things I was going to say for people, so if anyone's suffering with digestion issues, have you got any go-tos in terms of stomach acid? I like using a bit of foods like dandelion root tea is really good to help with bile production. I like incorporating apple cider vinegar. Have you got any others?
So I go back to old Poliquin, and he would say that if I'm telling someone eat steak for breakfast and the gold standard, whatever you decide it will be, and if you don't ask them to take digestive enzymes, you're wasting your time. That's how zealousy he was. So I kind of still rate that as being fairly true. So digestive enzymes and or HCl. HCl being hydrochloric acid, which is the raw material straight in the gut.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, HCl is the first thing that kicks in, and that tells the digestive enzymes then to come in from there. So HCl being the most important. Depends on how fucked your guts are. But anyway, digestive enzymes to help mechanically break down the food, as well as chewing it maybe and not watching TV. And then glutamine, I think is the gut lining's fixer.
Yeah.
So it helps any perforations in the gut lining. It helps energize it and perhaps fix it. And also glutamine is an immune function tool. So if I'm ill, I go around the house with these chats, don't I?
So interesting.
If I'm ill, your glutamine's stored in your muscle mainly, right? So if I'm really ill, I'm laid in bed, I'll get skinny arms and skinny legs. And that's because the body goes, I need glutamine to help me fight this, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And glutamine will help me. So it's an immune function. Because I don't need to have massive arms laid in bed, type of thing. So digestive enzyme, glutamine, and then possibly, I'm not sure about this anymore, but maybe probiotics to energize your colon. But I'm not sure that's true now. But the two things I do talk about is digestive enzymes and glutamine.
When you say digestive enzymes, is that a particular food type?
It's a food that, with food, when you eat them, they've got enzymes within the food, but also you produce enzymes within your gut. So your pancreas produces digestive enzymes as well, which helps break down the food as well. So if you're high stress, your HCl will be suboptimal, which will not therefore tell the other systems to fire in digestive enzymes, and then the food will leave your stomach ultimately, and then go through your stomach lining, but it won't A, digest completely, or B, pathogens will kick in through holes in your gut called perforated gut or leaky gut.
Leaky gut.
Which goes back to what we said.
And that's one of the reasons why bone broth's so good, right? Because it's got glutamine in it, what we just talked about, and it's
glycine.
also and then it fixes the gut wall as well.
Yeah, really glycine does it too.
So bone broth would be like something would be an example of a digestive enzyme you could eat.
Well, not so much a digestive enzyme, but it'd be a good food it'd be good what you might call a medicinal food.
Oh, right.
Type of thing, you might call it that.
It would help with if you had leaky gut issues. So like if someone had leaky gut, what you'd want to do is first of all identify the food that's causing inflammation and causing leaky gut.
Which is always not meat.
yeah, which is never gluten or something like that.
Meat has never caused that. Ever.
It's true. All the other shite does. So there you go.
So you remove that food, then you give them like antimicrobials, something like that is going to balance out your gut bacteria and put it into a good state of good to bad. So stuff like that, MCT oil's a good antimicrobial. You got stuff like aged garlic.
Is kefir?
I'm not sure.
That's more of a probiotic type thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
With the bugs. I'm not sure about all that stuff, but.
And then once you've done that, then you want to repair the gut lining. So bone broth's really good for repairing the gut lining. Colostrum is probably the best thing you can take for repairing the gut lining as well.
In that vein, AIM Nutritionist need to CrossFit colostrum.
Something. This is another rabbit hole. I don't know if we've got time, but I might mention it if you don't mind. Is
please
one of the things that we. One second, I'll get in trouble again. When we talk about colon health or lower gut health, we talk about the interaction of fibre with the gut microbiome, right?
Yeah.
That causes short chain fatty acids, which energize the lower intestine and all that stuff. And one of the things it produces ketones. But one of the things that the liver does when you're in a high ketone diet is produces beta hydroxybutyrate, which of course then derives down to butyrate. So the butyrate, the interaction of the gut flora with the vegetables, for want of a better word, produces butyrate. But actually also, if you're on a keto diet, the butyrate does it for you, and globally. So maybe the whole fibre thing needs to be reconsidered as well.
Because I've been
I don't need any. I don't take any fibre on at all. And I've written a book. I shouldn't say that, but I've written a kind of a pamphlet about the importance of fibre and green leaves and blah de blah, and I retract it.
Really, what you're discrediting your own work?
Yeah.
Fair play. I like that.
I do.
I like that. Someone that can change their mind. On they're willing to. They've written a pamphlet on. And they're willing to go. No,
if you own that pamphlet, throw it in the bin.
It's a bestseller. Did you? I sold about 12 copies. No, it's
just
a different thing. It's just a different way of looking at it. And I have some personal experience with lower bowel issues. So I'm even more. We're just having the crack here, but I don't go near fibre at all.
Do you ever like whiling out with some bad food, like guilty pleasures? Is that
sometimes I go mental and just have liver and steak together? Of course you do. But things that I know fuck me up, which is the basics: wheat, gluten, fibre. I don't go near.
Really, what like that's not, because I suppose it's sort of. You have kind of like, I don't know, inverted commas, cheap meal or whatever. Is there just no interest really?
I'd love to have it. I'd love to have toast and pizza, and I'd love to have it, but I just don't do it.
Really?
It's not because I'm a geek, but also it does the pleasure, the pain kills me, so I just don't do it. So if I have let's say I went out for a curry tonight, for example, I'd just have shitloads of rice.
Oh right,
that'd be it.
No butter chicken.
No. Oh yeah, I'd have all that.
Oh right, well that's situation.
I'd have all slather it with shit, but I wouldn't have naans or
J-pats.
None of that.
What's your thoughts on? So I've noticed as I've kind of started eating more and more this way, that my tolerance for a cheat meal is so poor now that if I do go, and there are times where I'm like, I'm gonna have 2 burgers and chips and a milkshake and some cookies. It's been known to happen, but my sleep after that is so poor. Yeah. I basically won't sleep the night after I eat that, and then I wake up the next day and I'll feel like death warmed up. Yeah. What do you think? But back in the day, like when we were at uni and I was eating a high carb diet, like I could have Domino's and cookies and I thought I'd be fine. Do you think it's just a sensitivity thing? Like now I'm way more in tune with what's going on with my body.
2 things. I think one is, you're not used to the food, and therefore the enzymes that your body would produce aren't. They're going, Christ, I haven't had this. What the hell's this? Yeah. And it produces an inflammatory response. It goes, what the hell's this? And it causes an irritation to the gut. And of course the fact that it's shit food anyway.
Yeah.
So if you carried on eating that shit food and you never became like you are now, then you'd be fine. Yeah. So you got to be careful what you wish for. So
you'd be fine for so long, right? But then you're obviously going to run into some health implications if you're eating like that further down the line.
You're buggered. But it's an enzyme thing. You're just not used to it.
Yeah. Okay. We went on quite a big tangent then. I think you were naming your 3 things to like help people manage stress.
Oh yeah,
and we went down the food rabbit hole for quite a while.
How did that happen? I think
I was asking stupid questions. I couldn't help myself.
So stress. You tasked me to. So lifestyle. Get out in nature. Turn off the laptop. Don't have so much screen time. And a massive one is dim the lights in your house. So if they're blue light, as in your normal light, change them to red or orange, or yellow. I can't stress that enough how good that is.
Yeah,
I've got kids.
I've got those yellow glasses. The glasses.
Yeah.
Those ones. You put them on as well. Those blue light blocking glasses.
Yeah.
Although someone told me they're bollocks.
Yeah.
I actually don't know what to believe anymore.
There is something where it says that it's probably better than nothing, isn't it? Let's be honest. But that in the house when I've got the kids over, all the lights are dimmed and red or orange or yellow. And the difference when they're with me and they go to bed is massively different to when they're with their mum.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Because she's got the normal light. Yeah. Because they're buzzing around. Of course, they've got blue light, which tells the melatonin. It tells the brain not to produce melatonin because blue light stops melatonin production. Therefore, you can't sleep. I mean, you can't. It's a strong word, but it's more difficult. You want to give your body the best chance. Hence, the whole thing is lifestyle, breathing, go for a walk, eat well, and the red meat, white meat, fish in the evening is a good call. because your digestion is easier on white meat of fish. So also, if you stuff yourself really badly in the evening and your digestive system isn't quite up to scratch, you can be laid there, like you just said, kind of going, oh, canal, and you're not actually resting, or you're just like churning over.
Your stomach's got a circadian rhythm of its own, right? So it's like, I try and eat 3 hours before I'll stop eating 3 hours before I go to bed, and that seems to work pretty well for me. But I know people that can do an hour, and they're okay, you know.
A good bomb to help you sleep is a banana, would you believe? Because if I go to bed and I take a banana with me on the side, so when I wake up at 2 o'clock, so when I go,
like a safety thing,
it's just I've got to have a banana. So if I wake up in the evening, which I do, and I eat banana, it's got high tryptophan and it's a carb and it's got magnesium in it, and that's your knockout bomb to help you sleep. Magnesium, tryptophan, all that stuff. So eat a banana. I swear you'll all be doing it.
Someone said this to me before.
There as a last resort, I suppose. If you can't sleep, you eat a banana.
Yeah, I promise you, it'll knock you out. Honest to God, honest to God.
I'm going to try that,
James.
tonight.
I believe you. I 100% believe you.
Or you're even sometimes in the evening. I'm sat and I'll have rice and a banana and some honey. So it's a fairly high carb bomb.
Mixed together.
Yeah, mix it in together in a big old skillet.
Really nice.
It's beautiful. And it's carbs, why not? And it's banana, which is magnesium. I think magnesium is probably the most, if you want one nutrient that's going to help you relax, it's probably magnesium glycinate.
Yeah.
As opposed to magnesium citrate, which is different. There's different magnesium chelates, but magnesium glycinate would be the one I'd go for if I want to.
Is it like a rice pudding situation?
Yeah.
So with milk?
You could do, why not?
It's not like a Muller rice or something like that.
I don't see why not. I really don't see why not. So if you're going to have the carbs, you might as well have something you enjoy. If it's this rice with a banana chucked in, maybe some berries, I don't really see the issue. If you're going to have the carbs.
Adapted, of course. Yeah.
The excitement on your face.
But otherwise,
that sounds really nice.
If you want some rules,
rice pudding every night before.
But honestly, I let me know how that goes. It should buzz you a little bit. It should be quite calm down. Then if you chuck in some,
I ain't got a way to go yet before I need to
chuck in some.
I need to reverse everything on this.
There's a lot of people just scribbling out all the notes they've taken during this podcast. It's a rice pudding, big letters at the bottom.
Shit, yeah. Ashwagandha is another good one. It's an adaptogenic herb.
It's really
so
good.
What is it? What? Sorry.
It's an adaptogenic herb, and it calms down. It actually, interestingly, it appears to do a couple of things. It reduces cortisol, thereby increasing testosterone, and helps you sleep. So you can see how sleep and cortisol and testosterone are linked. See, so
reishi has a similar effect to the similar sort of thing. Just get that
another
in
little
there.
plug there.
Yeah, just so you don't have to go out and buy. I know you got the reishi at the house. So you
it's colostrum, beef organs, and of course reishi, all sold on at A Nutrition.
I like that we weaved them throughout the episode. You know,
good plan.
Yeah, that was my plan all along, my evil master plan. So the other thing I wanted to ask you as well was you talked about estrogen and obviously like managing estrogen. For me, when people say like how can I avoid estrogen, I always say avoid BPA from bottles, so don't drink from plastic bottles, especially if they've been exposed to sunlight. And then the other one is soy. So soy is a xenoestrogen as well.
Yeah, you get in trouble for saying that as well.
Are there any other ones that you suggest people avoid?
Sadly, everything, even like you plug in smelly things in the house to make it smell nice. If because you've smelt that, it's a molecule, isn't it? Comes in, something has to happen with that molecule, it doesn't dissipate. So just don't have any kind of smellies. Don't put, if you're wearing underarm spray, put it on your clothes, not your body, because anything you put on your body, you should be able to eat. Pretty much.
I say that, and people say that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
But why?
I agree.
Yeah, but I know
the epidermis is the biggest organ in the body.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's why, because I got the old water filter for the shower.
Yeah, that's a
whole type Berkey.
And water. If you had unlimited funds, you probably try to do a reverse osmosis filter with your water. But even just a Brita filter helps. Just your standard field that helps get rid of a lot of heavy metals, and I don't know if it gets rid of estrogens necessarily, so it's probably a bit small.
So you're not using shower gels or anything like that?
Yeah, so I use the shit shower gels, but I know I shouldn't.
That's the guilty pleasure.
I love it. Yeah. Shower gel.
Radox.
That's why like Mo's candles are so good. So Mo, who's the guy we're going to have on, we've already recorded it, but we're not going to release it before this one. But he has got a whole candle company, and all he does is all essential oils. So it's all natural scents, because that's the point he makes to everyone, is they're putting these synthetic scents in, and you're just breathing it in, and it's wrecking your body.
So anything you breathe in or eat, or anything that comes into you, however it comes in, it can't be kind of chemically. Of course, life's made of chemicals, but I'm just shit chemicals. What I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And sadly, nearly everything we do is just ingesting chemicals, whether we drink them. Food additives, pesticides, herbicides, these are all estrogen-like compounds.
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, just only eat something that's never been sprayed. The animals are probably grass-fed and never been given any hormones. But
it's wild though, isn't it? Because it's when you start looking, you can be like, okay, well, I'll get grass-fed beef that's not stored in. Do you know what I mean? It's I don't want to get it because it's stored in plastic, because you're going to have this, and it does.
It's difficult.
It is difficult, but I sort of feel it's like, I don't know. This is only my surmising on it, is that adults are like hardier than children. I feel that children have just less. So when you're a baby, anything you give them that will have a great effect on them. Anything they see, anything they hear, anything you give them to eat. Whereas when you're an adult, you seem to be a little hardier. So these things that will affect you, maybe a kid could eat them once and they'll come out in a rash, or there'll be some kind of reaction. But with adults, it's like chronic, and when you keep doing things over and over again, that's when you see these negative ailments, I suppose, affect you as a person. But it has to be done over a long period of time.
I don't think that long. I really don't. If you look at, as I said, when you look at kids nowadays, some kids now are they've got man boobs as 10, 11, 12-year-old boys. So why is that's an estrogen issue? That's a xenoestrogen issue, either something from the environment or something they're eating, or both. So I don't think it takes that long to kind of fuck people up with these. It's a hormone. They're called obesogens for a reason. That makes you obese, and it's.
Do you think if they played more in the mud, wrestled with each other,
I absolutely
it would go a
agree
long way
with
to get rid of those gyno?
I never wash my kids. I let their mum do that. Generally, I don't. I say, don't worry about it. It's fine. I think that's a very important point, actually. Yeah,
we know that from like when you play rugby. I always say this, like the farm boys, because there's always like the token farm boys in the team, and they're always like just very hardy individuals. They don't get ill, and it's just because they've been rolling around with animals, and they've built like a mad immune system up. And they're
carrying hay bales.
Yeah. They're in sunshine all day. They're exercising. All these things. It just makes for a hardy, person.
Farmer strength, isn't it? That's what they call it. Farmer strength.
Yeah, used to call it Mong strength in the army, but I shouldn't say that.
I don't know the legality on that. That's
in trouble.
What I was going to say, so we've hit about an hour and 20 now, and I think like we've just hit so many
too much
takeaways.
So much to go.
Was there anything else that you wanted to dive into, or?
When we stopped rolling, of course, like, I should have said that, should have said, but
yeah, we'll have you back on for sure. This has been like powerful. I think like so much takeaways out of everything we've done so far.
Yeah, definitely. I'd 100% agree.
Thanks, mate. No worries.
Awesome.
It's great. It's the coffee your Lion's Mane coffee, mate. That's just done it.
Yeah, that's how we just hit. That's the fifth product we've hit there.
Yeah, there you go.
We also do CBD and
what was the cordyceps?
Bull testicles out soon.
Testicles. That's something I want to get some of that. Generally, that'll improve your testosterone.
Yeah.
But I can't get hold of them. I go to Darts Farm, try to see.
I'm just about to do a capsule. Yeah.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
I generally didn't know that.
Testicle eyeball.
Another one up.
I did not know that.
Actually, what's your opinion on this? So I'm looking at doing an eyeball one as well, and my thought process behind it is like eye builds eye, and I feel like we're going to be running into eye issues in the near future because of the amount of screen time that we've never been used to in human history.
I'd have to think about that one.
Yeah, it's well. Anyway, it's be interesting.
The testicle one's better.
Yeah, well, it's coming. It's coming.
Like that.
James, for people listening, if they want to know more about you, like where can they find you? What's the name of the gym and everything?
So it's PFP, which is Precision Fitness and Performance, one in Exeter and one in Clumpton. And I think I'm on Instagram as PFP 24/7, PFP Gym 24/7 or PFP Gyms 24/7. And that's probably about it, really.
Okay, great. I'll link your website and everything in the thing below. Harry?
PFP.
Yeah, at Harry Williams 91, slightly more activity. I would though, I'd say that having trained down at PFP now for like a year and a half, I think it's definitely the best gym. If you're in Exeter, definitely head down there. It's sick. Like the vibe and the equipment's all just like wicked. Massive fan. So cheers, James.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Cheers,
and my stuff, Instagram's ape_nutrition, websites apenutrition.co.uk. I've just set up a discount code for listeners of the podcast. It's AS10, so that'll get you 10% off site wide. And we've got all the products that we've interwoven into this episode, plus more. So thanks for listening. Thanks for coming on, James.
My pleasure, mate.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks
Cheers,
very much,
mate.
boys.
Wicked.
Awesome.
Cheers.